looking at a game by the name of Barenpark. This is a game that's been designed by Philip Walker Harding, who's designed a lot of terrific family games in the recent few years, such as Imhotep and Cacao. And this is, I think, another worthy successor to those games. This game will play from 2 to 4 players in about 30 to 45 minutes. The box says ages 8 and up, which seems completely appropriate. It is a new game. It's being published by Mayfair, I believe, in the U.S., and it should be available at the end of June, beginning of July. And it is a tile placement game where players are going to be drafting tiles from a collected board in order to complete these tile grids, which represent their bear parks, which are essentially wildlife preserves where players are going to be trying to create the most attractive wildlife preserve. So let me take a minute to show you how the game works, and then I will come back and let you know what I think about it. I've set up here a 2-player game of Barenpark, and I should note that there is a small misprint on the first edition of the game. This stack here should get 10. I wrote that on there with a Sharpie. It had 10 written here instead. I just crossed that out. And then this sign here that shows you how many tiles to put on these spaces based on the player count should point to this space and this space, not this and this space. So that's a small issue with the first printing of the game, and I imagine it will be fixed in the future, but it's relatively easy to fix as it is. So you're going to set out a number of tiles of these 2 types based on the number of players. The board tells you how many to put out. These tiles here, the most valuable tiles, only 1 of each will be there regardless of the number of player accounts. You'll create a stack of tiles to add to your park over the course of the game. You'll set out a number of these completion bonuses, these bear statues, based on the number of players. The instruction book tells you how to do that. Each player is going to get a starting board to build their park, so the first tile for their park, and they'll also get a tile based on their turn in player order. So the earlier you go, the smaller your starting tile. So this player got 1 by 1, this player got a 2 by 1. There is an advanced game. I would say you probably want to play with it in general, and what it does is it gives you a number of these objective tiles that I think there are 10 different ones, and you're going to set out 3 during each game. So for example, the first person here to get 3 polar bear tiles into their park would get points. Second person get fewer points. Also, this one is collect these 4 types of tiles, and this one is to form the river tiles into a contiguous river at least 3 tiles long. So these you want to form into a river. So those are essentially the setup of the game, and now to explain how it plays. So it's relatively simple. All that you're going to do each turn is add a tile to your existing board, potentially expand your park by taking additional tiles, or take additional tiles that you'll add on later turns, and then you are going to, that's it. That's really your entire turn. And the objective is to complete these, or to place the highest value tiles into your park for the end game scoring. So I won't be playing well, but I'll show you roughly how this would work in practice. So let's say that this player starts. They might want to take that tile, place it there. And whenever you place your tile, so if I place it here, nothing would happen because it's a blank space. But whenever you place your tile, if you place it on a piece of machinery, so this player is placing on this cement mixer, they would then get to take a tile from that section. So you can see here this board is divided into sections. There's a gardening section, construction section with a cement mixer, and a construction section here with a bulldozer. So, or I guess a backhoe. And the way that this works is if ever you place on this space, you can take from this area, or this area. If you place on this type of icon, you can take from this area or this area. And if you place on the garden icon, you could just take from this area. And you're going to need to make sure you're consistently placing onto these icons, because there's no way of drawing tiles except for placing onto those spaces. So by placing here, this player could take a tile. Maybe they would take, let's say, one of these tiles. So, and you can see these tiles here have points on them, so those are going to score you points at the end of the game. So whenever they're in a stack, so in this 2-player game there's going to be 3 in each of the stacks, you can see that the earlier you get these tiles, the better. So this player, might choose to take that one, add it to their reserve to place in a future turn. And that would be their entire turn. So now I come back to this player. They have this double tile here. So they might just choose, let's say, to place it here. Again, they've covered up one of these. They might start working on this polar bear bonus and take that tile. And then just like that would be this player's turn. Now let's say they place it here. You can see this square, this 2x2 square would cover up this and this. So this would get them an additional tile, and this would get them an additional space to build in their park. You can have up to 4 of those spaces, including your starting space, and it'll give you room to expand. So if this player placed here, they would get a starting tile. So let's just say they took that. Maybe they want to add that there. And then they get to add one of these to their board. So they could add it on any side, and it has to be flush with the existing grid. So you could not add it down here. You can't add it down underneath the start of your entrance. Let's just say they added it here, and that would be the end of their turn. Now I go back to this player, and they would have to place this tile. So it's really, the game plays very quickly, and you could see that there's essentially a little puzzle that you're working with. So let's say this player places this here, and maybe they would want to do that there, which would allow, yeah, so they'll take that tile, add that to their collection. So now we'll be back to this player. And so this would just keep going back and forth with players taking tiles, adding them to their board. So eventually what will happen is oh, I should note that this space here that's roped off, you can't place on. So eventually, a player will play, grab some more tiles, grab some more tiles. And then if ever a player gets into a position where they've completed a board except for that space, they'll be able to take this bear statue, the highest value one that's left, and add it to their board, and that will give them bonus points at the end of the game. Similarly, if ever they complete one of these objectives, they'll be able to claim that tile just as a free action, and that will give them points at the end of the game. And the game will just simply go like this until one player's completed their 4 boards, or until, I guess, no player can make a move. I'm not even sure if that's possible in a 2-player game, but it might be in a higher player game because there's only 10 of these single tiles, so with bad play that might happen. And then you'll just add up your score. So you'll add up the points for any of these bonus tiles that you've gotten, the points for any tiles that you have on your board, and then the points for any of the bear statues that you've placed. So that is really all that you need to know to play Barenpark. So Barenpark, I will start off by saying that this is, I think, one of the strongest family games to come out this year. It's a game that bears some similarities to some recent games. I could think of like Reiner Knizia's Fits or Uwe Rosenberg's Cottage Garden and Patchwork as similar games like this that have this spatial element where players are going to be trying to simultaneously solve different puzzles. But this one I think takes it up a notch compared to those games because of the way that tiles get drafted and because of the way that the scoring is dependent upon you getting into a certain type of tile more quickly than other players, it becomes a little bit more competitive than those games. It's one where you are going to be always paying attention to what your opponents are doing, especially if you're playing with those bonus tiles, because a lot of times you have to commit to one versus another. And because of the way that the game works, insofar as you don't just draw a tile on your turn and play it, instead, as opposed, to something like Carcassonne where that's what you're going to be doing. You have to actually plan out in advance how you're going to get the next tile for your next turn. So because of that, the game has a little bit more strategic depth than most games of this type, and to me, it's really satisfying. I really enjoy the game. I really think that it's one that does not, create a lot of extra rules compared to those games, which I tend to like. I like this genre in general of tile laying games, but it doesn't create a lot of extra rules, but it does add a lot of planning, especially because your plans could sometimes get blocked if a player takes the last tile of a type that you need. I will say that it does play a little bit friendlier in 2 players than it does with more players because the number of the green tiles that you have access to, especially those 1x1 tiles, which are sometimes very necessary to complete one of your boards if you've painted yourself into a corner, does not fluctuate based on the number of players. So at 2 players, they're pretty plentiful, but at 4 players might just grab those right away, so they can have them for later. So there's different strategic decisions to be made based on the number of players. It's still a good family game regardless, and you're going to have large number of points at the end of the game, no matter how you've played. So it doesn't feel like a mean game, even if people are drafting tiles out from under you. But it is one that I think is a little bit less mean at 2 players. And I mean, in general, I think that, like I said, this is really a superb family game. I think that it has great graphics, except for the small board misprint that I pointed out. And I think that it's one that almost anybody could play and enjoy. That doesn't mean that they'll be playing optimally, but the objective of the game is very straightforward. The rules are very simple, and the gameplay is really fun. You feel a sense of accomplishment as you build your little park. And it's fun at the end of the game if you're playing with other players, to see how they've done versus how you've done, what decisions they've made, and so on. So a really terrific game, one that I'd highly recommend you check out, is Barenpark, and thanks for watching.